Welcome to the Virtual Reality Reconstructionist, the show where we explore the fascinating intersection of technology and safety and how your work is helping to save lives and prevent accidents. I'm your host, Roger Ryan Ryder, and I'm excited to be here with you today. Welcome to today's episode of the Virtual Reality Reconstructionist. We're out with Yuan of Stitch3D. Stitch3D is a company that stores and makes 3D data accessible. They believe that the world should be captured in 3D, and you should have this simple platform to manage it. Clark is the founder and CEO of Stitch3D. First of all, thank you for your service, Clark. We appreciate that. Clark is a former Army intelligence officer who graduated from the U.S. Military Academy at West Point in 2012 with degrees in systems engineering and Chinese. After serving 7 years on active duty and overseas tours of Afghanistan and South Korea, Clark left of active duty and discovered a passion for entrepreneurship at the intersection of the national security, technology, and business. In 2020, Clark founded a Stitch3D, a 3D data software startup fund from the U.S. Air Force. The company's mission is to make 3D data easier to work, and by building the cloud infrastructure that support 3D visualization, analytics, and collaboration. Raised in the suburb outside of Detroit, Michigan, Clark enjoys outdoors, traveling, and reading. So welcome, Clark.
Thank you, Rim.
Just share a bit about your background and your journey in the military leading you up to your current role as CEO of Stitch3D.
Sure, yeah. Thank you so much, Ryan, for having me on the show. You know, my background started as an immigrant to this country. I moved to the States when I was 6 years old. And growing up in Taiwan, I had listened to my grandfather's war stories, first, during World War II, find the Japanese, and then during the Chinese Civil War. They fought on the KMT side, the nationalist party that lost and retreated Taiwan. So I grew up very closely aware of their journey and their stories in the military. So coming to the U.S., when we moved here in 1996, it was in the midst of the second Taiwan Strait crisis. Missiles were launched that spring, and that was the spring that my family moved to the U.S. So I think growing up, it was always in the back of my mind that the China-Taiwan scenario was never settled. And I was thinking about a way to get back to the country, both, where I came from and the country that we moved to. So it was a pretty easy decision for me to choose a military path when I was in high school, and then decided to enroll at West Point, study Chinese to better understand the history, the language. Even though, Taiwan speaks Chinese as well, they use traditional characters, and China uses simplified Chinese characters, which I never learned before. So really just trying to understand everything, from the history to the politics, the military to culturally, how, we can bridge that divide. What I realized throughout my course in the military is that technological innovation plays a big part in deterrence. You can see this with, nuclear weapons. Every time technology advances, there's a period of peace followed by intense warfare. I think we're kind of in that cycle right now where, nuclear deterrence has given us a great, period of peace, but now we're entering into the future where artificial intelligence and drones and robotics, there's a lot of uncertainty in terms of where the technology is going. And what I really want to do as a tech entrepreneur is figure out my piece, my role that I can play in preventing that from happening.
Excellent. Well, that's a great background. Very impressive. I appreciate everything that you're doing. I don't remember how we came across each other. I think I found your software when you were first developing it. This is a great, first step at a startup company. And just give me some ideas about the Stitch3D concept and how it came about.
Sure. Yeah. When I was transitioning from active duty, where I served as an intelligence officer, into the Army Reserves, where I continue to serve as an innovation officer, looking at technical capability gaps that the Army faces in future battlefields. I started working with a Navy research lab out in San Diego. And this particular lab was using LiDAR technology. And LiDAR, for those that are unfamiliar, it's very similar to sonar and radar, but instead of using sound waves and radio waves, LiDAR uses light waves to document and map the physical world. It gives you a 3D picture of what you're looking at. Anyways, this particular laboratory was using LiDAR technology to document naval ships and facilities, assets, particularly from a damage assessment perspective. And what I quickly realized is, as an intel officer, I had worked a little bit with LiDAR technology, but seeing it proliferate to commercial devices and consumer devices like the Apple iPhone Pro in 2020 when they launched the Apple iPhone 12 Pro. They put LiDAR on the platform. To what the military was using and doing with it, I realized that the data was coming on in a pretty big way. Yet the software capabilities to manage that data and to be able to work with it, share it, was lagging far behind the hardware capabilities. And that was kind of the entrepreneurial idea is, the military was still using external hard drives and Blu-ray discs to share data, and nothing was really on the cloud. The data was very siloed, operations were very siloed. And I basically decided to embark on a journey to build a platform that lets this data be shared a little bit more easily. And the Air Force looked at the idea and decided that it was good enough to fund. So they gave us 2 research contracts to build out the platform. And, we were off to the races.
There's a lot of businesses out there that look forward to that day, right? As far as funding, because that's a big hiccup on developing anything. So congratulations on that. We're going on 3 years.
3 years, yeah. We started in the summer of 2020. It was the COVID summer, of course.
Yeah.
So we started remotely, which is good because that was around the same time that I started business school. It actually gave me some time to do market research, to really talk to customers and users of the technology, understand, pretty intimately what the pain points are versus, what the pain points were in the military, see where the overlap was between commercial and military to try to see if there was a dual use technology we can build out of this.
When did y'all come out with the product?
So the public beta was launched on June 30th. We have been testing with our private beta, as you're familiar, starting around March of this year. Did about 3 months of private beta testing, and now we're currently in the midst of our public beta testing, and we're hoping for a full product launch around Thanksgiving of this year.
Okay, excellent. So far, what have you seen? Some examples of end users using 3D. What arenas are they in?
Oh my gosh, it's it's really starting to proliferate into just about everything. Law enforcement, as you know, is a emerging industry that's really able to capture the benefits of 3D data, whether it's for traffic accident documentation, crime scene documentation, building documentation, pre-planning, route planning. 3D data just gives you a much better situational awareness capability than traditional 2D photographs or aerial satellite imagery can. We're also seeing use cases in utility, measuring obstruction and right of ways. Looking at utility lines and encroachment of vegetation. Looking at elevation heights. Where the telephone poles and electric poles are being placed relative to the right of ways of the poles. In the military, of course, the military actually invented LiDAR, I think in the 60s, initially to look for missiles in the Cuban jungle. LiDAR, one of the benefits of LiDAR is foliage penetration. It can penetrate through leaves and touch the ground and look for objects hidden beneath, the canopy of the trees. So really, and now that it's on your iPhone, the consumer use cases, are just now starting to, kind of develop and come into its own, with the Apple Vision Pro being released later next year. It wouldn't be difficult to think about a scenario where social media in 3D is a reality.
Any personal level usage with your platform?
Well, personally, we've started to experiment with various iPhone apps that lets you take LiDAR scans and photogrammetry data. And I was on a trip with my girlfriend this summer. We were hiking some castle walls in Europe, and instead of taking a picture or a video, I decided to capture a 3D image of her, and it was really cool because you can kind of zoom around, see it from all sorts of different angles, from a top-down view, a side view. You can also measure the distances of the ramparts that we were walking along, which is really cool. Something that you wouldn't be able to do on a photograph. So you can map it and see exactly where in the world you were when this image was taken. So all in all, it's the technology is evolving so quickly, and 3D data now is becoming not only easy to capture, but the quality of the images itself is improving to a point where, now it's something that people are actually will be interested in using for their personal lives.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's Polycam and Recon 3D. I've used a couple of them to venture out into the LiDAR world with the phone.
Yeah.
If you do anything in 3D, it's hard not to at least try it and work through it. It's going to be interesting to see how your platform develops and see if it's used on it. I think right now a lot of them are using it to share meshes, to
Yep.
use for gaming or other purposes. But you might see some of that, I guess, in the future, huh?
Now, we've been following the iOS 15 updates, even with the new iPhone that's coming out with the depth cameras. LiDAR becoming more ubiquitous, the software being able to, capture 3D data directly from the camera app. Right now, like you said, it's mostly meshes. You're capturing individual objects and, transporting them into an augmented reality environment, being able to view it. Say if you were to capture like a couch and IKEA and transport it back to your living room and see how it would look. That is really cool. And what we're also very excited about is, in addition to meshes, the opportunity to capture point clouds, which is, as you know, more engineering grade and give you the distances more accurately than a mesh could be able to.
True. Yeah, they're starting to pick up as a common thing. So, well, we're talking about point clouds. Why don't you give us an overview of the platform itself? If you can give somebody without a visual, to show them, kind of walk them through what they would see on the platform.
Sure. So the layout of the platform is very similar to a Dropbox interface for data management. When you log in, you'll be able to upload your files, and currently we're optimized for point cloud and meshes. So you can upload, your most common LAS, LAZ, E57, POY files, OBJ files for point clouds, and then FBX, GLB, STL files for meshes as well. The uploads for the point cloud goes through a conversion pipeline. We optimize it for streaming onto a web browser. So you can upload up to a 250 gigabyte file. The capacity to upload a single really large file exists on our platform. And the only limitation is just your Wi-Fi speed. And of course, we can't control that, so if you have faster Wi-Fi, you'll be able to upload faster. But once it's up there, the benefit is now you can view it and share that data with anyone else using a public web link or a private email invite. You can set password protections, set expiration dates. And this is important because it prevents someone else from having to download and then upload a massive point cloud file into a viewer, which is time consuming for everyone. It streamlines the workflows, makes it easier to work with, and encourages people to collaborate in 3D more so than you normally would. The features that we include in the viewer are, distance, area, volume measurements, and volume. We include stockpile and crater volume measurements, slope measurements. We also give users the ability to capture snapshots and create video fly-throughs of the environment. So, if you want to take someone through a building, you can walk them from the entry point of the doorway to wherever it is in that building you want to take them to. And you can create that fly-through video. So we're still, we're constantly improving on the platform. There's some exciting features that we're going to release coming down the pipeline. But mostly it's just a platform to collaborate in 3D.
I played with it, the software, the platform itself. So just kind of explain the difference between loading a file and then using your canvas as a tool, how those two steps work.
The viewer is really just, it's a vehicle for you to see your point cloud data, whether it's point cloud or meshes. Our 3D viewer, which is completely built on the cloud and deployed through the web, allows users to pull up on their iPads or iPhones or from a laptop browser, the point cloud. The difference between our viewer is that you can actually make markups to the point cloud. So if you want to save your measurements, you want to take distance measurements or area measurements, volume measurements, create a fly through, add annotations, add comments, you can save that as layers on top of your point cloud, and then you can create a canvas. You can create unlimited canvases, therefore getting version control from a single point cloud file. So the point cloud original file will never be changed, but you can, use that same point cloud file to create multiple versions with multiple markups, depending on who you need to share that data with. So that's the difference. You can share either the raw point cloud file, the visualization, or you can share that visualization with markups. Both will work the same.
Okay. Yeah, there's some really great tools in there to collaborate with. So do you have any current interaction that y'all have seen some positive feedback on?
Yeah, one thing that users really like about our platform is the ability to map geo-referenced point clouds. So if you're a drone operator and you've, processed your point clouds and geo-referenced it, you can take that geo-referenced point cloud and map it pretty accurately on our platform. And then once you have that, it's great for, not only visualization, but it's great for presentations. So whether you're, in a marketing pitch, trying to sell your services, or, just trying to, contextualize where that point cloud is relative to the rest of the world, looking at street maps, satellite imagery maps, it gives you broader context than just the point cloud alone. So the mapping feature is something that people really like. Another tool is the ability to slice the point cloud in the XYZ direction, also be able to rotate in the XYZ direction. So for example, if you're looking at a skyscraper, or let's just say like a 4-story school building, you can slice that in a dollhouse view, top down. You can rotate the angles if it's a roof. And this allows you to see inside the building from multiple angles, which users also really like.
So I know we've talked about some of the new progression in the laws, and I think one of them is going to impact you excessively is the floor plans and layouts for schools. So how does Stitch 3D platform affect that newest law to establish those floor plans and layouts to law enforcement?
Yeah. So the law in consideration here is Texas's House Bill 3, which is the school safety law. And if I remember correctly, the law was passed this summer, and it grants $15,000 per school campus building to develop, safety measures to map the interiors of the school and look at ways of sharing the digital graphics with law enforcement. One thing that law enforcement officers repeatedly came back to, especially after the Uvalde school shooting situation last summer, is that the delay in response time is not due to a lack of manpower. It's due to a lack of situational awareness once officers arrive on site. And that's because most officers have never been to that school. If a school does have 2D schematics, they don't have time to flip through and multiple scrolls and looking at the blueprints. Most of the time, those aren't labeled properly. They don't have the right vernacular. You're not going to know where Mrs. Williams' biology class is from looking at a floor print. So the idea here is that lawmakers understand this challenge, and they pass regulation for schools to basically communicate using 2D or using digital mapping with law enforcement. Now, what we've seen so far is that a lot of those maps are still in 2D. It's mostly just taking aerial satellite imagery and overlaying response graphics, school layouts on top of those aerial imagery, pointed to true north with grid lines. But in our opinion, 2D is inferior to 3D because it still doesn't give you that full situational awareness. If you, for example, have a school that's in a city, or you have a high school with multiple floors, toggling between the first, second, third floor can sometimes be a pain, especially when you need to quickly respond. So when you have a full 3D digital twin of the building that you can label, you can fly through, you can basically guide the officers to exactly where, they think the active shooter situation might be occurring. And officers can pull this up from their patrol vehicles on their laptops or their iPads before they get on site. So therefore, they're not entering the school blind, and they can respond much faster.
Your point to 2D and 3D is spot on. Being able to, lower the roof and look inside the third floor, second floor, first floor, especially is going to be another officer, right? Guiding that officer to a certain point on scene. But it's going to be very impressive how that pans out. So, and so your platform, how would it work? Yet how it would work workflow wise with law enforcement. If they bought a license per se, is it scaled down to each user, or would it be an agency platform and anybody can use it? How's that going to work?
The way a department would purchase this is through an enterprise account. They can choose as many seats as they want to give access to. We don't recommend, giving an account to every user because that would be kind of an overkill. The reason being is because you can share a point cloud publicly with anyone on their email. So if there was a situation, emergency, or an active shooter scenario that, that starts to develop, the emergency dispatchers can simply just share out a link to all of the officers within the vicinity. They can pull up on their phones without having to create a Stitch3D account and visualize the buildings. I guess just to walk through how a department would do this, Stitch3D is completely hardware agnostic. We're not providing the scans. We're not selling hardware. We're simply a software platform that facilitates the data distribution and visualization analysis. So number one, a department would have to decide whether or not they want to commit to 3D laser mapping. If they do, there are basically two routes they can take. They can either purchase equipment for the department and train officers on how to use it and go and scan the schools themselves, or they can work with a service provider who is already well-trained in the equipment to go and map the data and give that 3D digital twin back to the department. Either way, once they have the 3D data, the point cloud for that particular building or for that campus, it would sit in the Stitch3D platform, in our secure cloud platform. I guess I'll just mention here that the Stitch3D platform is backed by the NSA for our cybersecurity needs. It's been certified to host DoD data, so that the data is secure. Uh, but whoever then has access to that account, the enterprise account from the police department, whether it's the police chief plus the emergency dispatchers and maybe a few of the department heads, the unit team leaders, they would be able to go in there, make annotation markups, share that with the schools, or vice versa. The school administrators can share their markups with the police departments. And now they have a, full 3D digital twin that's been marked up, annotated, measured, ready to go if a situation were to ever arise. And if a situation does arise, the dispatchers can quickly search for the particular school that's in question. And again, just use an email link to send it out to everyone or text it. And then they can expire the link after, say, 48 hours when the threat has been neutralized. So, it would be a per seat account on an annual subscription. And that's how we would sell the software.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how that operates. So part of this, us getting together with your platform and my exploring virtual reality is it's hard for expert and people in the field to keep track of the 3D documentation. I mean, it's crucial to most experts, meaning for me, for instance, as an expert, bringing that into court, how do you share it? How do you work with that? So those tools provided by Stitch3D, can you see how that would enhance that knowledge or that field as far as communicating to an end user on a crash scene or shooting incident or something when they're going to have this 3D documentation? Could they use this platform to communicate the understanding of the site?
Absolutely. So storytelling is very important. Whether you're dealing with a traffic fatality or a homicide, or a school shooting, maybe a post-hurricane damage scenario. One thing that 3D data does, in addition to being able to make very accurate measurements and to document as is conditions, is that it tells the full story. So, on the one hand, while it is very beneficial for traffic reconstruction engineers, the forensic engineers to look at the point cloud data to make measurements and to try to recreate the scenario, it's equally important for them to be able to share that data with the necessary stakeholders, whether it be the insurance companies, whether it be the district attorneys, lawyers, prosecutors, the media, the families. That data needs to be able to get out to the necessary parties. And again, currently it's a pain because the current workflow for most people is they have the data stored on a Dropbox or a Google Drive or some other cloud storage management platform. And those platforms are great basically only as a vehicle for storage. You can't view the point clouds, much less analyze or map the data. So if you were to share this with a DA's office, unless they already have the software downloaded on their desktop, you'd have to convince them to download the software on their desktop. And that's half the battle. So with this platform, you can just easily share a 3D link or share a web link, and anyone can pull up the 3D visualization without a Stitch3D account. So it's just making it easier to tell a story to the people who need to be involved.
Excellent. Yeah, I think that's going to be a great tool, especially with your coordinate systems, being able to show like a city event. If they've got areas scanned with a drone, they can overlay that on the map and talk about it and, in a group or pre-planning and get a very good visual, keep everybody on the same wavelength. So a little bit on marketing and effectively promoting your services is essential for any business, especially with y'all starting out. So what strategies and insights can you share on the marketing of the Stitch3D and the potential client?
Yeah, that's a great question. We're currently going through our marketing strategies. We still haven't fully launched the product on the market yet. So we're still in the very early phases of our go-to-market strategy. But one thing is, to take advantage of social media, take advantage of platforms like LinkedIn and Facebook and YouTube and X, formerly Twitter, to basically get the word out now that not only is 3D data coming, but it will affect your lives in a pretty significant way. And Stitch3D makes it easier to share that data. What we found is that this technology is still pretty esoteric to most people. And so there's a good amount of education curve that we need to climb in order for people to adopt and want to use the technology. So it's just doing little things like, showing people how to capture 3D data directly from your iPhone now. And every time we do that, we get a kind of like a, wow, like this is crazy. The future is here kind of reaction. And then showing them, not just like, hey, this is cool visualization, but here are all the benefits that come with 3D data. So yeah, it's part education, and then part, talking about how our technology can make a difference.
You're right on. I think all those avenues are going to be, very interesting. And in my business, I thought it's a little bit hard to advertise to law enforcement. I think now that we're opening up events, probably best to see them one-on-one, face-to-face, because they like the hands-on opportunity. But yeah, it sounds like y'all have got a good way to reach out to them. And I know you've already been doing it pre-release time, so that's good too. And scaling up that platform on Stitch 3D, obviously a huge task. What are some of the challenges you may face in the journey, and how can they overcome based on your experiences that you're relying on?
As far as scaling up, I think the two big areas that we need to focus on is how many different types of 3D file formats we want to support. There's a lot, especially when it comes to meshes. It seems like everyone's got some sort of mesh format they like to use. There's non-proprietary file formats, different point cloud formats. So 3D is just proliferating in a lot of different areas and different industries, and it seems like each industry has their own preferred file types that they like to use. So one of the challenges for us is, where do we focus on first, and then once we do that, where do we turn our attention to next in terms of the markets we want to penetrate, and the formats that they use. I think the second part is these are not small data sets. A lot of 3D data sets can be quite large. It's not uncommon to see anything from a 10 to 50 gigabyte file. Managing the server traffic as we start to scale and as more users are uploading data, making sure that the servers are running at full capacity, knowing when we need to scale up our servers to be able to service the amount of data that's being uploaded per day. That's something that we're going to also have to keep an eye on.
Excellent. Yeah, I can imagine the amount of data. Do your engineers have background in storage and how to better manage that?
Yes. Yeah. Our engineers are excellent. We have a web engineering team, and then we also have a 3D engineering team. It's a small team, but everyone, I think you have to be a self-learner. And when you're working at a startup, the answers aren't always available to you. And I think everyone on our team just, embraces the challenge of, learning every day and figuring things out.
Excellent. So how do the listeners connect with you and to Stitch 3D?
Yeah. So the first place to go is to our website. It's www.stitch3d.io. And from there, you can click on the contact us page, which gets routed to our emails. We check the emails every day. Or if you want to reach out to me directly, feel free to reach me at clark.yuan, that's CLARK.yuan at stitch3d.io.
Stitch 3D and the virtual reality reconstructionists both have digital data storage. That's our common area. Can you elaborate a little bit more on the importance of using an online service like Stitch 3 as opposed to in-house? Or I think you've touched on it a little bit, but can you just focus on that one little area there on storage?
Yeah, cloud storage is so important. And it's the reason why, Dropbox took off the way it did, right? And why so many people are using Google Drive and OneDrive. It's just the ease of accessing your files when you're on the go. A lot of people, they will have local backups to their hard drives or to their laptops and computers. But when you need to access the files, when you're on the move, when you're in the field, you don't have your laptop with you, being able to access your data from any device on the cloud is critical. It's also a great way to back up your files. In case you lose your computer or you lose that external hard drive or thumb drive, it's a great way to back up your data. So 3D data is the same, in certain cases, it's even more important because of the size of the data sets. It takes a long time to upload, so you don't want to do that very often.
Well, that's a good point, because I think everybody's seeing that those files get big, and where you store them. And part of my thing is, it's interesting on what you've come up here with is getting it to, as an expert, getting that data to lawyers, because it's so big. It won't go over the internet driven. You almost have to deliver it to them to an outsource, or like you're saying, Dropbox or Google. Axonsevidence.com storage capability. Have y'all,
Yeah, I've looked a little bit into it.
okay. Have you tested that, or do you know if that's a potential of, so police departments, if they're storing their 3D data on evidence.com, do we know yet if that's going to be transferable, or can they use that platform to view it through Stitch 3D?
I'd have to explore the technical feasibility and also the business feasibility to integrate with something like an evidence.com. As far as I know, evidence.com is you have to create an account to be able to access the platform. And it seems like it's, mostly restricted to, law enforcement personnel. But I would say that if you have data that's stored on the cloud, the transfer of that data is pretty easy for the most part, technically speaking. It's just, whether or not evidence.com would be open to making that data available for, merging with another cloud platform.
Yeah, I'm almost thinking, doing working copies on Stitch 3D as opposed to trying to get onto the original data is probably going to be easier. But I know for like body cameras, you're not dealing with those, but for a lot of that excessive storage, law enforcement are going to that type of service, similar to yours, but, basically for all those big things. Anyway, we've talked a little bit about Stitch 3 and your storage capabilities, your format, how you're working that, as well as how it could be applied to an end user. So I really thank you for everything that you've informed us on today. Very interesting concept. You see anything that we kind of didn't touch on that you would like to expand on for Stitch 3D that we didn't cover today?
Not specifically for Stitch 3D, but I think it's just like we're still in the the wild west of 3D right now. Like the opportunities, the capabilities, it's very exciting to think about what's still to come down the pipeline for this, this data set that's really starting to take off. You think about things like using machine learning to, conduct change detection, look at two different point clouds in different periods of time overlay on top of each other to identify, like what's changed in that environment, or looking at, again, using machine learning for computer vision, being able to do object detection, instant segmentation to look at, individual objects within a 3D scene, all sorts of different volume metrics, navigation tools. Like it's just very exciting time right now to be working in the 3D space. And, especially for law enforcement, a lot of these capabilities are directly applicable. You look at object detection, for example, now instead of trying to analyze a 2D photo, if you have a 3D point cloud, you can potentially pick out bullet casings that you may have missed, or, you can look at different types of weapons and classify, what type of weapon it is that, a hostile actor might be carrying. So yeah, it's just overall a very exciting time to be working in the 3D space.
What is the starting features if somebody wants to look at Stitch 3D and use it? How would they get started?
So when we launch the full product, fingers crossed by, end of November, definitely by the end of this year, users can sign up for individual subscriber account. They can have a 14-day free trial. All the features will be available. Really and there's also going to be a free account as well for those that are unfamiliar with 3D data and just want to, dip their toes in the water. A free account will start you out with 5 gigabytes of storage. And then the paid accounts start from, basic to standard to pro. And then we also have an enterprise level as well in case, you're working as part of a large organization and you need to quickly add members to that organization. But we're not really restricting any features at this point. The only difference is just your data storage needs. If you're a big organization working with hundreds of gigabytes of data, we have an account ready to go for that. If you're just trying to experiment with things like 3D printing or iPhone 3D data capture, you may not need that. So that's really the biggest difference.
Well, I would encourage anybody listening to the podcast today to check it out if it's something that you're storing or you want to share with your customers. I'm definitely going to use it for Triple R investigations. But to close out for today, this is our episode of the Virtuality Reconstructionist. If you enjoyed the show, please be sure to subscribe and leave a review of your favorite podcast platform. And if you have feedback, suggestions, or questions for us, you can reach out to me personally at ryan.rider@triplerinvestigations.com. That's RYAN.RIDER@TRIPLERINvestigations.com. Thanks for listening. Stay curious and stay safe.